Hello, Lydia.
Hi, how are you?
It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm doing good.
too.
The first question comes from an anonymous Jeffrey Elementary student. Would you put more swings, huge slides, and monkey bars at the parks? Would you make gyms for kids and adults? Kids want to work out too. And would you also put more firefighters in the station?
Oh, that's a fun question. Hi, I'm a nurse, I'm a mother, and I'm a grandmother. And I believe that every community should be a healthy place for children, a place that is inviting, welcoming, sustainable, and inclusive. And I think public parks are one of the most important things you can have in a community to establish those values in our children. I've been a parks commissioner in the city of Kenosha. I also serve on the board of directors of the Southport Park Association. So I'm working diligently in a specific park, and our association is in partnership with the city to completely transform one of our lakefront parks. I led the drive when I was on the Parks Commission to create water slides in our public pools and to establish the Anderson Park Soccer Complex, because soccer is the most probably popular sport in the entire world, and children from all kinds of backgrounds can come together playing soccer. I felt that you shouldn't have to pay, a whole lot of money to find a place with a water slide and water, so that's why I led the drive to do that. I think we've got a lot of room for improvement in a lot of our parks, and I think parks are essential to a sustainable quality of life. They drive up property values, they make neighborhoods more welcoming and inviting. They also bring children and adults together from different backgrounds, and I think that kind of inclusivity really matters in our community. So I'm looking forward to working with families, with children. When I was alderman in my district, I actually invited families to come in and look at the catalog of park equipment to see what they wanted in the little park areas that we had in the 3rd District. I found that was a really fun experience. Families felt empowered when they had the ability to choose what they thought would be right for their own children in their own neighborhood. So I look forward to working with families and children to upgrade our parks as we go forward. I also think that when we talk about sustainability, parks are a really important asset when it comes to environmental stewardship. So for me, we increase carbon capture, we address water cleanliness, both Lake Michigan and in our aquifers. So if you let me go on, I'll just keep talking about parks because that's one of my favorite things. But I'm going to switch over to firefighters. I also chaired public safety and welfare when I served on the city of Kenosha, and our committee had jurisdiction over police, fire, and housing. So I worked very closely with the fire department to make sure we had the appropriate level of staffing, number of firefighters, to make sure that we could get to every home, every business in our city. My goal was to get it down to 5 minutes. And I really enjoyed those relationships. Firefighters are very close to my soul because my background in nursing was all about, saving lives, improving quality of life for people. And I deeply respect the courage, the incredible hard work that firefighters are doing for us every day, not only putting out fires, but in terms of rescue, emergency medical care, and so forth. So you'll find I'm very friendly to firefighters.
Nice. This is an anonymous KUSD high school student. What are your thoughts on the uptown area? And do you have any plans to do anything to that area?
Thank you for asking that question. I serve as both a plan commissioner and I serve on the redevelopment authority, and I'm also a home commissioner for the city of Kenosha. So in 3 different ways, I've been actively involved in improvements to our uptown area. Now, for a long time, that has been a targeted area for urban renewal in our city. But the rioting that happened a few years ago and the fires that were lit there added urgency to the city taking action. A whole area of buildings had to be leveled, and we needed to go in and replace. So I participated and supported the creation of the Uptown Loft project. But it can't end there. We have a lot of work to do, not only slightly west of that area, but also moving east down toward the railroad tracks. It's an area between 63rd and 60th, I think, is that area. Recently, the Redevelopment Authority went into that neighborhood and did systematic inspections And also law enforcement did an in-depth look at, what is the incidence of crime. Some surprising things that came out of that research was we have a lot of cosmetic work to do, and I would like, consistent with my earlier answer, to establish a park space for families there to gather, for children to be able to get outside and enjoy fresh air. But we mainly need to go in there and do some rehabilitation to properties. We may need to do some infill projects. But I want people to come out of that experience once we're done with the feeling that this is a neighborhood of choice in our city. So we want to blend that together with projects going on in the downtown, but also the Kenosha Innovation Neighborhood. So that whole swath of land, these are some of our oldest neighborhoods in the city, and I'm very committed to keeping Kenosha moving forward and want to do those projects in those areas.
Do you support the Menominee and Seminole Indian tribes' plan to develop a gambling casino in Kenosha? Do you think a casino would be a good idea for our community?
I actually have a lot of questions and some concerns about this idea. I'm a big fan of orderly development, and a casino, while it's been rumored for quite some time, I don't feel that we've really had a big enough community conversation about this. From the standpoint of giving a property tax base, what are the trade-offs economically for our community? What does it mean to the culture of our community? I know a lot of people who live in homes out where this is proposed are very disturbed about this concept for a variety of reasons. I would like to see the City Council and the County Board take their time, maybe have some specific public hearings in various parts of the city about this, where people can come in and voice their concerns. I know when we ran into difficult challenges when I was on the Common Council, it always helped us to get a better take on the feelings of our constituents, our taxpayers, when we actually moved out of City Hall. For example, every year I held budget hearings in my district so that my constituents could look over my shoulder at the numbers and the ideas that were in the budget. I feel like we need to take a slower walk toward this because land on our interstate corridor is very valuable. And I don't like the idea of giving up tax base unless we're really certain that we're going to get the right value in return.
What would you do to prepare and incentivize Kenosha residents to create small businesses? How do you plan to prepare the workforce in terms of training so that they would want to stay? What types of jobs creation would you promote and invest in?
So we've actually been involved in the city in promoting local businesses and helping them to build, their businesses over many, many years. We have a number of organizations the city works in partnership with even now. The Kenosha Area Business Alliance, the Chamber of Commerce, the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative, just to name a few. We work very diligently to listen to people who are leaders in the business community to get their take on where we can deploy community resources at City Hall, okay? I think, a lot of people are studying carefully what it will take long-term to, make the generational shift in our city so that younger families are drawn here, want to stay here, want to build careers and businesses in our community. It's a complex issue. There's not like a magic bullet that makes it all happen immediately. But I think that if we create, as I said, that welcoming, inclusive, and sustainable environment, our community will be more resilient, more families will be drawn here. I'm big on quality of life. So as you heard earlier, I talk about parks, I talk about environmental stewardship. I want to see upgrades in how we approach development and design. And I think all those things come together to create an attractive place where people want to live. And I think if we take those ideas and skew them younger, actively looking for the participation of younger adults in some of the decisions that are going on, that will be healthy for our city. If you look, for example, at a lot of boards at City Hall, a lot of them are populated right now with older people like me. But I think we need to bring in fresh, younger people to participate in the ideas that we're wrestling with at City Hall. And I think that's what's going to really help us turn this corner.
How would you utilize smart city technology and innovation to improve city services, enhance local news media communication, as well as make the city more efficient? Overall, what would a healthy Kenosha look like?
You heard me talking earlier about my belief in the importance of healthy communities, and wherever we can, I think City Hall can be digitizing input from our community. A simple example is, instead of having to make a phone call for about a pothole, you can take a picture and go to a link on the city's website. One of the things I really wanted to change is the city's website itself. It's a pretty static screen. It's not particularly attractive to look at, and I think it's very murky to navigate. So I happen to have not one but two daughters who are involved in digital media and communications. So they look at it and say, yeah, Mom, you've got a lot of room for improvement up there. So we have tremendous talent within our community to participate in that. Smart City is about a variety of things. There's not like one thing. It's a basket of changes. I look forward to working with Carthage and Parkside and business leaders in our community to developing the concepts that we can implement as a city. I think that's going to change things. The other thing is, I want to make sure that in every neighborhood we have access to public Wi-Fi. I think Wi-Fi is going to be the key thing for every child in school, and I don't think that getting access to the internet, to the information superhighway now, should be dependent on a family's zip code or income. So to me, that's a really important thing to upgrade our community. I also, circling back to your last question, think those kinds of changes draw younger families, young professionals, young people in all walks of life actually are looking for that kind of environment. I don't think we should supplant the private sector, but I think having at least basic access to the internet is going to be a keystone change we need to be thinking about. The city's on its way with Fiber City going in, but I think we need to just be very careful to monitor that, upgrade that, and do everything we can in City Hall to digitize functions that will make it easier for people to just go online. Some changes are happening. I'm talking fast, I know, but some changes are happening already. It's easier to register to vote. It's easier to vote now because people can do a lot of these things online. You can file your property tax online. And our current mayor will tell you I've always been sort of very focused on ways that we can make our communication system at City Hall far more user-friendly to our constituents.
How would you rebuild security forces and communities so that they can trust each other and work together?
It's a little pricier than traditional. They ride around in cars. This actually is asking law enforcement to get out of their squad cars, walking beats, riding bicycles. I'm a fan of motorcycles. If we could afford it, I'd get them on horseback. But I like community engagement. And that's where the city is now. Talking recently with our police chief, he's saying the focus is now more on engagement than just getting out. They're working with community-based organizations. To me, that is key. I look at our community organizations, not-for-profits, whether they're shelters for homeless people, or they're doing Meals on Wheels, or they're doing programs with children. All these various organizations, and we have a wealth of organizations, I consider that social capital. And social capital partnered with law enforcement can have a transformative effect on people's experience of a community. You do find from time to time there are hiccups where policing could be done better. I think that's has a lot to do with training and screening officers carefully, when they're being brought in. Many come out of a military background. We're finding not just here, but across the nation. And so they come out of the military with a kind of warrior mentality. You need to, focus training so they're moving more into a protective mode with citizens day to day. Have I seen mistakes? Of course. We've all seen mistakes, not just locally, but in other communities. But I have a lot of confidence in our chief and in our professional police department that they're focused on change. They were active participants in creating the Kenosha Action Roadmap to the future. And not only were they involved, but faith leaders in our community, other community leaders were working diligently together. We need to keep that project moving forward and do periodic reviews to make sure we're keeping pace with the changes we want. This kind of goes back to what President Obama talked about, being the change we want to see.
Do you have any plans for affordable housing in the future?
Now you're in my wheelhouse. So as a nurse, I believe affordable, safe housing in welcoming neighborhoods really matters to individuals and families. It creates a feeling of safety, a sense of belonging, a feeling of neighborhood and people coming together. And I want people to see our community as a family-friendly community, but for people in all age groups and at all stages of life. It's why I serve on the Redevelopment Authority. The mayor appointed me to the Redevelopment Authority, the Community Development Block Grant Fund, and the Home Commission, because this is a passion for me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very interested in seeing us move into a real strong urban renewal project in our, what we call the Uptown East neighborhood. The Kenosha Innovation neighborhood will be bringing in workforce housing. And we have been active as a redevelopment authority in the Wilson Heights neighborhood. That's a serious urban renewal area. But neighborhoods throughout our city have infill projects that are possible. Another organization that I think needs to be mentioned here is Habitat for Humanity. I'm working with them right now to modify our building code so that they can be doing their projects at lower expense and moving them more quickly through modular components and changing foundations of buildings. So you're going to see that that's something that's very close to my heart. It's very hard for people to have an investment in housing and to see their neighborhood deteriorating. And I think the city has a duty to homeowners to make sure we're lifting up the quality of life in every neighborhood and expanding homeownership. One last thing I really want to mention here. About 47% of Kenosha's housing is rental property. One of the most transformative things we can do for families especially is to help reliable rent payers become homeowners. They become more vested in their homes, their neighborhoods, and the quality of life. They become more active participants. We've seen this change happen in the Lincoln neighborhood over the past couple of decades. Now this is slow change, but it's crucial change to move people where we can through a combination of down payment assistance, mentoring, because a lot of families come from generations of being renters, don't have that in their repertoire. So to me, mentoring and support, down payment assistance can really help us get more neighborhoods expanded with home ownership and more stable.
How do you guarantee that the little progress made in racial relations, inclusion, and reduction of social gaps does not slide back in dangerous reversals as the DEI controversy is amplified?
To see diversity, equity, and inclusion politicized, to me, is a giant step backward in our society. I think it's very damaging to individuals, to families who struggle. It's dangerous for neighborhoods and for communities and for all of our institutions, especially educational institutions, for example, right now. Fascinating thing is if you look at corporate America, they're ahead of many governmental entities at this point in America. They recognize how important this is to their workforce. They don't want to feel like people don't want to join their companies because they have a reputation for discrimination or inequitable systems. We need that same perspective in city government. We need to live that out in city government. And it's one of the reasons that I want to establish a Human Rights Commission in the city of Kenosha. But I also believe this is up to each and every one of us to stand up for people when we see things that are inappropriate, where they need to be supported. Bullying happens in vacuums where people step back, and we need to be supporting each other. Can I guarantee that people will behave in a certain way? I wish I could. But I think that if we model the way that it should be, where we are respectful of differences between people, diversity, and we work to create equitable and inclusive environments in our community, I think that's where the change will come from. And I think partnering with business and industry is going to be key. Recently, I talked to a leader in a pretty serious corporation who has been contemplating coming to our city, and they're unnerved by the rioting and wanting to make sure that our community is moving past that and embracing divergent people and diverse viewpoints and experiences.
There is, unfortunately, a common expression voiced by the youth: there's nothing to do here. which isn't true. How would you change that rhetoric within our overall community? What makes Kenosha special?
That's a really deep question. For me, this was a wonderful place to raise my children. And I want every family to know that experience as well. I think there are tremendous opportunities for children growing up in everything from the arts to science. We have an array of educational facilities and so forth. But in the end, I don't know that the city can go individually child by child to create those changing attitudes. But I think if we can focus on the overall environment, if we can provide support to families, and if we're good listeners, I think that's where we're going to see change happening, okay? I love having like youth summits. I love having a youth commission. I love, engagement with people, again, in all age groups. I think we need to be engaging with parents to see what they're experiencing with their children. We live in a time when we're seeing very frightening changes going on in teenage years for children. Suicide rates, for example, are on the increase. I think that in part is a function of people feeling excluded and bullied and not feeling like there are safe spaces they can get to. So we need to work diligently, not just firsthand, but also through our community-based organizations, our social capital, to make sure we're reaching into communities of color, ethnic and religious differences. We need to be working carefully to make sure people first of all feel safe,
right?
Okay, and then to feel that this is a welcoming environment. And I think, as we talked about a little earlier, we need to get the word out. We need to make sure that they know there are great places to be and things to do throughout our city.
In short, please state your top 3 priorities. What impact do you think you can make within the community in Kenosha? What strikes you as the big issue that you want to take up when you become mayor?
For me, I'm focused on 3 big things, but 2 go together. Focused on economic resilience as a community and affordable housing. I believe those 2 things go hand in hand. And I think that we've got a lot of different ways, as I mentioned earlier, to work on affordable housing. We also have to make sure that we are rolling out the welcome mat to great companies that want to locate here, and we're supporting family-owned and built businesses that are already here. So those 2 things go hand in hand to me. If a family can't find a place to live when they're new to our community, the economy is not going to do too well. So, in fact, at City Hall, I know of 2 employees that came and threw in the towel because they could not find affordable housing close to City Hall. And that really floored me. I'm focused on public safety. As I mentioned earlier, public safety from the standpoint of teamwork and partnership between law enforcement as well as our social capital, our community-based organizations. Some of these organizations are doing phenomenal work, and I want to boost them and support them and help them to network more and more effectively throughout our city. Whether it's getting meals to senior citizens, after-school programs in our children's schools, making for better playgrounds and public spaces, building up neighborhoods, expanding our park systems. All of these things feed into quality of life. And for me, quality of life is probably going to be one of the bigger issues that I'm focused on. Because when people feel like it's a resilient, buoyant place to raise a family and work, and retirement age experiences are good too, I think people come, work, raise families, and want to stick around.
This is the final question, and it's from another anonymous KOSD high school student. What makes you suitable for the mayor position in the city? What makes you good as a leader?
Well, let me start with the second question. For me, leadership is not about being in front of the camera, ironically today. And it's not about being out front all the time. To me, it's about having the ability to get people to work together to solve problems and establish new ideas and bring them to life. A good example in my own experience was bringing the community health center in our community life. In the wake of the Chrysler pullout, a lot of people lost insurance, a lot of businesses folded. And the Mayor Interimian came to me and said, can you look at this federal report? I have a nursing background. And so I looked at the report and realized how serious the problem was in our city. Lack of access to primary and preventative medicine was a very serious problem. I was able to bring together people from competing hospitals, from county government, from local stakeholders, community-based organizations, the medical society, the dental society. We all gathered around a conference table, and we did that in a way that we built trust and a willingness to work together, because fortunately everyone at the table agreed this was a major community problem. In the end, we submitted the highest rated proposal in the United States to create a community health center. The city, I didn't realize at the time, had been trying for years to do that. And I think the secret sauce was building strong partnerships and trust. I think that's the recipe for leadership. It's not always, I have to be number one, I have to be in front, but giving away credit where it's been earned, letting people who've really been making a difference take a bow. I think that gets more people involved, more people want to participate, because they don't think they're doing this to make you important. They're doing it because they have a passion for building a strong community, and I share that passion.
This concludes our mayoral forum at UW Parkside. We, the community of the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, acknowledge with gratitude and humility the First Nations people of Wisconsin, whose original homelands lie within the state. We especially wish to recognize the Ho-Chunk, Miami, and Potawatomi nations for their significant historical and spiritual connections with the Parkside area. Our footsteps do not replace theirs, but rest alongside them. Today, Wisconsin is home to 12 First Nations communities: the Ho-Chunk Nation, the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin, the Menominee Nation, the Forest County Potawatomi Community, the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of the Mohicans, the Brotherton Indian Nation, and 6 Lake Superior bands of the Ojibwe Nation: the Bad River, La Côte Oreille, Lac du Flambeau, Mole Lake Skogan, Red Cliff, and St. Croix bands. The University of Wisconsin-Parkside acknowledges and honors this history and these nations. Special gratitude goes to the mayoral candidates who actively engaged in this forum, namely Andreas Meyer, David Bugdala, Elizabeth Garcia, Corey Elijah Washington, and Lydia Spottswood. Our thankfulness extends to Professor Alvaro Garcia, Music and Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities, Sound Manager, Instructor Kevin Gray, and Parkside student Liam Simpson for operating the sound and camera work for this forum. Much appreciation to Dr. Simone Aritona Akindes, the Professor of Political Science and Director of International Studies at UW Parkside, who played a crucial role in refining the questions posed by members of the Kenosha community. Special recognition goes to the Executive Board of Parkside Student Government, who initiated and brought this concept to life, as well as selecting the elementary and high school questions. Acknowledgement to Kenosha filmmaker Evan Parshall, owner and editor of the 88s on YouTube, who provided the exterior drone footage shots of the Rita Talent Pickens Center for Arts and Humanities, as well as Parkside's natural environment. Musical intro number Evanston Civic Band March was provided by the UWP Wind Ensemble and Community Band, led by Dr. Laura Rexroth. The musical outro number, Theme for Ariana, Second Movement, was composed by Parkside student Joey Bellotti and led by Professor Alvaro Garcia. Also, thank you to the staff at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside who allowed this important forum to take place. Last, but certainly not least, thanks to all the others involved and the Kenosha citizens who submitted these insightful questions. Your invaluable contributions were indispensable to the success of this endeavor. Thank you.